Welcome to the acclaimed podcast, The Deep Dive, featuring your esteemed hosts, Andy Monitor and Drew Dinzik, powered by BetSperts.
Welcome to The Deep Dive. Guys, we have a special guest. Sorry we're running late. It's on me. This is not because of our guest. We have the number one women's Euro handicapper on earth, Andy Molitor, joining us for today's podcast where we break down the Philadelphia Eagles. Andy, congrats on all the success in women's Euro. Sorry that there's only one game left and not two, but how you feeling today?
Good. I don't know if we're actually going to do a whole podcast about it. Maybe I'll do a brown bag about it, but I'm definitely going to start flipping over to World Cup soon.
Ooh.
We're going to dig into there's so many places that have it up on like the main menu where it's like football, basketball, hockey, World Cup. I'm like, it's July. What are we doing? So I think they've somehow pounded into my brain that I'm behind on the World Cup. So I'm gonna get caught up and do a little figuring. I'm gonna talk to some people I know, see what we think, and kind of follow the same process I do for every international tournament. Just do some digging and get some. God, I love some futures because honestly, after I have a separate tab on my spreadsheet for future bets or anything that I bet that isn't gonna be settled today. Even something I'd bet for like golf, full tournament matchups.
Or like who's going to be the next James Bond or something.
The next James Bond is on the spreadsheet too. It doesn't have a settled date though. But the next, after the Euros are done on Sunday, the one that's settling next is U.S. Open futures for me. That's in like September. So
for tennis, yeah,
there's a definite gap. I might have a Polish girl at about 6 to 1.
Who'd you bet? Oh, Iga. Oh, nice. 6 to 1 for Iga.
It was a parlay. It was Joker to win the Wimbledon with her to win it. So
beautiful.
Took care of half that. And yes, it is the pending tab is starting to get a little thicker as I add more football stuff. I talked about that. I found a Justin Jefferson 25 to 1. They didn't take very much on it.
For OPOI?
OPOY, I think just based on where he's sitting in the market for, most yards, and it is always like, hey, who is the best non-quarterback? And I really struggle to see some of the real top running backs to get to the spots where they'd need to be to win that. So it's going to be a receiver, I believe. And it wouldn't surprise me if Cooper Kupp just did it again. But there are 2 or 3 receivers that I think have a decent shot to sneak into that spot. And we talked about Minnesota already. If they do open up the offense, he is maybe your wide receiver 1 when it comes to like fantasy points and bullshit like that. So I think that might get him an award this year. Like that one a lot.
I like bets like that because you're not even really taking a position. You are effectively correcting the market. Like that's a market correcting bet. There's no way Jefferson should have been 25 to 1, but also be the expected leader in receiving yards.
Yeah, he's like co-leader he's like the co-favorite to be the yards leader. So yeah,
one of those prices is wrong. And I think you were on the right side of that, which is those are absolutely my favorite ways to.
And we did say that
get down.
Not this Friday with smart people, but next Friday with smart people, we are going to dig into all the award markets. I think we're going to have a very fun show. I talked about it a little in the deep dive Discord, talked about some, hey, we're going to say, I'm going to set some criteria for each award based on who's won it the last 5-10 years. Then you and the guest can kind of nitpick that and say, here's a guy maybe that's outside of that could, and we'll come up with some takes and maybe make a few bets right there on that podcast. But yeah, today we're going to do 2 more teams and finish up the NFC East with everybody's darling that isn't the Lions and America's team, Jarrah's team, a team that won the division last year, team that won like 12 games last year, a team that didn't win any playoff games. So it's been a bit. So
let's talk Eagles.
Let's start with these Eagles who this kind of escaped my brain. I had forgotten how poorly they started the season. Like I remembered the end. I remember them getting there.
Jeez, you're right. 2-5.
2-5 to start the season.
Some bad losses in there too.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. Like people talk about they beat some bad teams. Well, every team with a lot of wins beats some bad teams. You have to beat bad teams if you want to bump your schedule or bump your win total up enough to get to the point where you are in the playoffs. And they did that. They were a 6.5 in the regular season wins. They were not expected to do much. They were like, I think they were like 4-11-1 the year before.
Yeah.
So they had, and you had the weirdness. If we want to go back to 2020, you had the weirdness where people are like, is the coach just going to quit? Like, he doesn't seem to get along with the front office. Are we just going to run into a weird spot here? And it felt more like a divorce than anything.
Well, it was the Wentz milk curdling that really
that didn't
unwound that team.
It's funny he's back in the division, guys. But
I know.
I think that probably was for the best. I liked the coach. I like what we did. It took a little bit of time to get things figured out, especially on the defensive side of things. And they were still missing pieces. And the shit kind of came together. And something I do love about any team that is able to find an identity is when a team does find an identity and says, like, hey, guess what? Our roster is really good at X. Let's do X really well, especially when game state / the other team's formations and scheme calls for us to use X. And with them, it was running the damn ball, which is not very 2021 or 2022. But again, we aren't ever going to be anti-running the ball. We're anti-running the ball at stupid times in stupid positions with stupid play sequencing. So the Eagles made it work, and then they got to the playoffs. You want to talk about the playoff game? Because I remember.
No. Let's go back to let's go.
Right.
I like the way you set that up, but I want to go back. You're absolutely right. This team was expected to come in fourth in the NFC East last year. They were the expected bottom dwellers, and you're absolutely right that through 7 weeks they were 2-5. Through 9 weeks they were 3-6, and they literally had beaten only the crap teams on their schedule. They beat the Lions, Panthers, and Falcons, and they lost to every team that they faced with a pulse. And some of the losses were pretty demoralizing. Like the Cowboys lost 41-21. It never felt close. Ultimately, the losses started getting a little bit more. We can build on this, right? Like the Thursday night loss to the Buccaneers, where although even that one sticks in my craw because I bet I laid the points with the Bucs in that game, and the Bucs had basically kneeled on the goal line. You remember that?
Yeah.
So that one was one where the margin really didn't reflect the actual win probability. So, but that said, they turned it around and they won 6 out of 8 down the stretch. Really solid finish. But when you look at who they beat up on the teams they should have beat. They beat the Jets, Giants, Washington twice. And so it's like there's not actually a good win on this schedule, is there? What's the best win on the schedule?
I mean, not really. Like the carrot. Let's go through them. Like the Falcons turned out to be a pretty bad team, but I mean, I'm gonna give them that. Like that was a thrashing. You can't say like it's a bad win just because it was a bad team. If you pound them like
it was an ass kicking. Yeah, it was an ass kicking.
A good ass kicking was fine, but the Carolina game, the silver lining there, it was on the road. Any road win is not bad, but again, it wasn't an impressive win. The Lions game, I'll go back to point one. It was an ass kicking. Like, that's sure. Something. The Broncos game.
At least it was an ass kicking.
Again, at least it was an ass kicking. The Saints one, I believe, was in the midst of a spot. I believe it was Trevor Siemian. That was a Trevor Siemian game. So,
you're right.
Anything, if you gave up 29 points to Trevor Siemian, I'm going to call that not a great win. The Jets, that is probably not going to be a great win. You want to guess who the quarterback was in that one?
Was it Mike White or was it Wilson?
I want you to guess both quarterbacks.
Oh, Jesus Christ. You mean the Eagles didn't have Hurts in that?
That was a Minshew game.
A Minshew versus Flacco or something?
No, it was Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson didn't play.
Zach Wilson versus Minshew. Okay.
That was Minshew played very well in that game. He was 20-25.
They didn't even beat a league average quarterback last year.
No, I'm trying to find, and again, then Washington, New York, Washington, the Dallas game, you can kind of toss out. They punted on that one since I don't think they could move any positioning. And then the Tampa playoff loss was
Okay.
that score in the playoffs is probably not indicative of how bad that. If you go, so it was 31-15, but it was 31-0 at one point. Like that game was well out of hands by the time we got midway. I mean, midway through the second quarter, it was 17-0, and at that point, it might have well been 71-0. It was just nothing was getting going. Hurts was pretty rough. The things they were trying to do that were working during the season weren't working because it was just too good of a defense.
Well, okay. Well, let me put a point on what was working though. What was working and the games that I watched of the Eagles. Well, not just playing bad teams, but getting a lead and then and then exactly what you said. They had a great offensive line. They had a great run scheme. They would get a lead and they would put those leads away on the strength of their trenches. And they did it against every bad team they faced, but they did not beat an elite quarterback. The closest they came was 27-24 against Herbert, I guess.
I was going to say, Johnny, they lost that game to the Chargers. There was that one actually. I'll give them more credit for that Chargers loss than maybe some of their wins. Like,
though, too.
I know, but they played a good team with a good quarterback close. They scored 24 there, but that was they lost to the teams that were better than them that had good offenses. They, obviously, like, what are you going to do? They played the Niners, Cowboys, and Chiefs right in a row after beating the Falcons. It's a rough stretch. It wasn't a crazy hard schedule. In fact, it was probably, if you look at it based on last year, it actually was an easy schedule. That was a big part of it, but they were coming in with new coach, new quarterback, new scheme, new defensive scheme. So all in all, it was a really good outcome, honestly. For it depends on how you look at it. Like I like teams to just tank if they don't have a legitimate chance of winning in the playoffs. But for fans of the team, I think they were probably surprised and happy with that win streak. It got a little excitement around it, and maybe it still doesn't. I talked to Noops about it this morning on Broadbag. The city of Philly is not rallying around Jalen Hurts quite yet. Well, he says the talk radio buzz is like, it's just never going to happen with this kid. It's not enough. Like, we're just going to get stuck in this middle of the pack, and that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah. Okay. So I bet against them aggressively when it came to that Tampa Bay playoff game. That was about as bad a spot as you possibly could have crafted for a young quarterback making his first ever start, going up against the defending champs and Tom Brady on the road. Like that's kind of a nightmare, but at the same time,
that coach, that quarterback,
everything, the scheme you were up against, every single aspect of it didn't fit. It wasn't good. That was a disaster. The good thing is that's why you want to, if you're a middling team like they were last year, or like our high upside is maybe we make the playoffs, why you go for it is to get that one out of the way. Right? Like, presumably you've gotten Hurts' stinker out of the way. Presumably the next time you're in the playoffs, if you have a more favorable matchup, or you're at home, even if you win your division, it's not as deer in the headlights kind of an experience, because that was my read on that performance from the Eagles, was very deer in the headlights, and whole team kind of embodied the Hurts' inexperience in that one. I guess what I would tell you is, how did we go from a team that didn't beat anyone in 2021, that got absolutely exposed in their playoff matchup? How did that team become the buzzy team?
All right, so let's start. Let's start.
Are we reliving the Washington football team last year?
Kind of. Let's start with the positive. So I put this: improving on improvement was one of the things, like, because they improved greatly last year compared to where they were. And again, the schedule is only part of the equation. Good teams lose to bad teams all the time. Go look who the Jaguars beat last year. The Jaguars beat a very good team at one point last year. Yeah. You still have to go out there and execute. There's not This isn't Alabama Citadel. The difference between the best team and the worst team in the league is a lot closer than you see in other sports. So you still got to get it done. And, granted, we have to grain of salt it because there was a lot of wins against bad teams. But yeah, there are things that's, just what happened on draft day. Like, how are we going to make Jalen Hurts better? Like, what does a quarterback need to succeed? First of all, he has to have it. We don't know. That's an unknown. So I'm throwing that out. You have to have proper coaching. I think they have a good enough coaching nucleus just based on like everything they did last year. Eventually, even on the defensive side, was all right. Here's the hand we're dealt. We're not going to try to be something we aren't because that's not going to work. We're going to play to our strengths. So I feel like the coaching staff is smart enough. And again, just staying on the offensive side, this ain't fucking AJ Brown. Like you have a good wide receiver core. Like and again, this is the big unknown. If Jalen Hurts has a big improvement in him, if he can get better at reading defenses, making his reads, making his audibles, adjusting, playing in space, playing, extemporaneously when things break down, he has a really, really good receiving core that should be top 10. He has an offensive line in front of him that probably has at least the over under for Pro Bowlers on the front five is 2.5. And I'd take the over in that spot. Like you have a top 5 offensive line. You have a all-star wide receiver that just got added to the team. I like Quez Watkins, Devontae Smith. If he takes a step forward, like the offense has everything, but it really doesn't work if Jalen Hurts doesn't take the step forward. So if you believe, and if you've seen enough and you've watched his film and you think his mechanics are there and it's just a matter of taking another step forward over the course of the summer, then I don't see how this offense isn't very good because they had an aggressive, well thought out run scheme that worked. If you can use that less and use it where you need to be using it and then really add a high-end passing game behind this offensive line, like how isn't this a very good offense? And offense matters so much more.
No.
Defense. We haven't even got to haven't even got to the defense yet. With you kept Slay, you added Bradbury. The Giants lost this year game.
I can poke holes in the offensive side of things.
Oh no, for sure. Like I'm starting positive. We'll get to the negative stuff. Then on the defensive side, they drafted and added to the defensive line. They probably got a steal, the Kobe Dean, and they signed Bradbury. Like they added pluses at all 3 levels on the defensive line. Kazir White, they added Hassan Reddick. Like it seems like on paper, if the coaching staff is smart and they make things happen like they seemed like they made good in-season adjustments last year. It seems like basically if Jalen Hurts is good, this team should have double-digit wins. And if Jalen Hurts is 100%, yeah. And I mean, probably capped out at like 12, 13 wins. Because we'll get to the schedule. And again, we did this with the Giants and the Commanders. When teams have an easy schedule, usually everybody in the division has a pretty easy schedule because they play the same cross divisions. They had an easy schedule last year, and they have probably an easier one this year.
Oh, strong agree.
So everything is in place. It comes down to the massive unknown, which is the hardest part of it. What we do here is like, if you're betting on the Eagles team to do really, really well, you're betting on Jalen Hurts. And that's why I talked about it this morning on Brown Bag. I said, you know what, if I were betting the Eagles, if I really believed in the Eagles and there's a chance I'm getting there, I would take them over 10.5, over 11.5, over 12.5 wins before I ever touched like the Super Bowl odds. Because again, it is, you said you got the stinky one out of the way. That's fine. Mm-hmm. It's still a young quarterback going up against, a spot where it's going to be really, really tough to actually slide all the way up to the 1 seed. So you're likely having to win several games, maybe several road games with still a young quarterback with only 1 playoff game under his belt. And again, even sometimes teams that are clearly the best team in the playoffs lose. It's a crapshoot sometimes in the playoffs because it's single elimination. So if I do believe in Jalen Hurts and everything they've added, like I'm really keen on these alt over win totals. Like the Eagles might win 13 games, and I'm going to get paid because I'm going to ladder my ass all the way up from 9.5 through 13. But yeah, on the other side of the coin, I mean, poke some holes then. Like poke holes in Jalen Hurts.
Let's revisit what do we. I mean, I still haven't made my mind up, frankly, about this team. I just know that the market is awfully hot on them, and that has me skeptical. But maybe the schedule works out where they're just not playing enough elite teams that you have to worry about it until the playoffs. In which case, your entire diatribe right there is, clip it, save it for the best of at the end of the season, where it's like, oh yeah, they won 14 games, but they lost badly in round one of the playoffs. Like that's entirely, they wouldn't play in round one of the playoffs. They win 14 games, but we'll put that aside for a second.
Yeah, I said it's hard to get the 1 seed.
Yeah.
The 1 seed is not off the table.
No.
Like, that's in the realm of possibilities.
We disagree on this. The 1 seed is gettable for anyone who wants it in the NFC. The 1 seed in the AFC is going to take some luck. The 1 seed in the NFC, if someone can distinguish themselves, that is yours for the taking. I think the poking the holes, it starts with Hurts, and it starts with the, you brought up a lot of, I think, kind of in a vacuum, he could improve on X, Y, and Z. His reading the defense, his adjustments, blah, blah, blah. Like all stuff that should come naturally to a quarterback who is gaining experience at a starter level in the NFL, right? He's cerebrally, he has all of the tools, and oh, by the way, he has sort of the cheat code for young quarterbacks in terms of his mobility, to where he can and should improve on all that stuff. Although most of the improvement we see comes between year 1 and year 2 for these guys, and he is now. He was the beneficiary of that last year, taking a team that was expected to finish 4th and making the playoffs. How much more room is there to take another step forward for him is a very, very real question, because, I don't look at this team last year and kind of look at some of their limitations, some of their shortcomings, and tell you that it was entirely because of who he had to throw to, which is what it would have to be for the addition of AJ Brown to all of a sudden completely change the the ceiling of the offense of this team, right? AJ Brown is a player I have enormous regard for. I thought that was a draft day heist, getting him from Tennessee, and boy, oh boy, the parallels between Philly and Miami are a little spooky, huh? You got a lot of the same kind of orbits.
All this firepower, and you got to see if you have a trigger.
Yeah, exactly. You push your chips on the table. You had a lot of draft capital the last couple of years, and if like presumably this is the year you find out one way or another if Hurts is your guy. The thing about Philly is that they still have a lot of draft capital in pocket for future years. So they've set themselves up, I think, fairly well, where if it's not going well, if they decide Hurts didn't make enough of a leap between year 2 and year 3, if they're getting enough kind of external pressure, they may be able to make a deal and kind of, try to upgrade the quarterback position in the draft next year. It's not impossible.
Or trade for someone.
Or trade for someone. I think ultimately, Hurts to me he's a good barometer quarterback. He's going to beat the quarterbacks he's going to beat the bad teams, and he's going to have a tough time against the elite, because I don't know that he's like, is Hurts ever the leader of an offense that is capable of scoring 30 points against a good team? If it's that kind of a game.
Yeah, can't answer that. And really, like, I did dig into this a little. I said, what limited him last year? And it really, I do think it just came down to probably inexperience and
what limited him last year. That's right.
Because it wasn't. So, like, yeah, I think Devonta Smith probably takes a decent step forward. I thought he was good, but it's not like he missed time. Like, he played all the games. Rager played all the games. Watkin played all the games. Dallas Goedert missed a couple, but it's not like you had big injuries throughout the skill positions. He had his good line. He had, the buy-in from the coaching staff. He played, most of the season. It was probably just inexperience, and then again learning another new system, having another new coordinator, having another new coach coming into this, and probably having lowered expectations, and easing him in early on in the season. So I think maybe that's why we saw what we saw. It wasn't like horrible numbers. Again, it was deer in the headlights, babe in the woods once we got to the playoffs, but that's the expectation when we get to the playoffs, and you have a essentially, let's just call him a rookie quarterback, because he played the year before, but he didn't play much. I mean, it's like, oh, hey, Mahomes wasn't a rookie that year because he played like 2 games. It's like, what?
I think he had about as many snaps as Lamar Jackson had before Lamar Jackson came out the next season and won the MVP.
I'm curious about that now. I'm trying to remember 2020 for him.
I thought he showed you some clear
15 games.
Yeah, I thought he showed you some clear flashes in 2020, which is why he
played
was an upside
big parts of a lot of games. So he only had 148 attempts in 2020. So his QB record was 1-3. So he played about
He started 4 games.
Yeah, he played about 3x what he did the year before. But yeah, he started 4 games. He had about 1,000 yards. 6 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. So big step forward in what he needed to be, what was asked of him. And again, I don't know. I'm not a great evaluator of like, hey, look at his, I'm breaking down the film and looking at his motion, looking at his mechanics. Like, I don't think it looks bad most of the time. How does it not get better and easier the second year in the system, adding AJ Brown? And yes, he isn't Lamar, but he still can use his legs. It'll be interesting to see what we do with that.
Here's the problem, and this is why I'm struggling with the Eagles in general, is that I'm exactly like you. I cannot put my finger on what it was that was limiting him. And I also don't see anything in the data that tells us what is especially good about him. Like, what is the attribute where he's like, you know what? Like, this guy's in... characterizing him, the characterization of Jalen Hurts is not easy for me. And that has me a little uncertain. So I think, number one, pop the bubble is Hurts doesn't make as much of a leap between 2 and 3 as he did between 1 and 2. And I think that's actually kind of expected. The other key thing that pops the bubble for me, or at least gives me pause about this team, is fragility. A lot of you mentioned the Pro Bowl players on the offensive line. No disagreement. This is a clear top 5 offensive line by my rankings. The problem is these guys are not young, and they have been. There's been there has been some meaningful injuries that have really derailed what the system is.
Yeah, I feel like 2 years ago was just an absolute dumpster fire on both lines.
So bad.
And then also, I didn't. Something surprised me, and he said he's not Lamar. Nobody's Lamar, but surprised me how many rushing yards he had last year.
Oh yeah, he was nasty.
No, I remember him being good, but he led the team. He had more than, and to be fair, like they used like 5 different running backs, and most of them to some decent success. Even Gainwell had 4.3 a carry, and being used kind of sparingly, but he had 784. I would have guessed like 550. So I mean, continuing to use that in the right way. Like if it goes asunder, it is fully on like, oh no, he hit his ceiling last year and he's not going to go any farther. Like that's what keeps this team from challenging for the division, challenging for the 1 seed. And you're right. The biggest thing that makes this team a possibility to get the 1 seed is Tampa Bay's schedule sucks.
Oh yeah,
Tampa Bay has a tough ass schedule.
I agreed. So the injury concerns don't just exist for the offensive line. Our guy Stephen Lackman, the man behind the Deep Dive Discord, if you didn't already know. He brings up the depth is better for the O-line than they get credit for. I can't tell you that. All I can tell you is that you have like all pros, and on that starting offensive line, and those guys are not young, and that is somewhat scary. Now that doesn't mean not to bet on this team. It doesn't mean to bet against this team. Certainly, it's just something to keep aware. to keep in the back of your head as you're looking for a red team case here. Similarly, AJ Brown, like that guy is a freaking beast, but doesn't always stay healthy. Not all, his availability was an especially big concern. And if we get, a team like Tennessee gives up on a talent like that, I think that's probably one of the reasons why they were willing to deal him. They were concerned about his availability. So Devontae Smith, also relatively small guy. Like, you've got wave after wave of potential guys to step in and try to contribute, as you mentioned. Quez Watkins is, high upside. Miles Sanders, running back, high upside. Gainwell, high upside. But all these pieces are fragile. So
look at
it's
Let's look at the schedule. See how they get their 14 wins now. Because again, we had a very, should we get fancy with it? Because we're gonna have some data scientists on yet this summer. Very bimodal distribution for the Giants. Like, I feel their win totals are clustered around 11-4, based on, again, the quarterback play and if it works out, because we are super unsure if that's actually going to be something that works. So like, there's a world where the Giants aren't very good because Dimes just isn't it. And I think there's many worlds where Washington isn't good. And we'll get to Dallas. I think there's plenty of spots where that offense takes a solid step back. If I'm the Eagles, I'm pissed I don't play them earlier. Like, I don't know when Gallup is expected, but I'd like to play Dallas as early as possible. So there's a lot of soft middle to this. And yes, Indy, Green Bay, Dallas, even like, no, I'm running out of teams. I guess Minnesota, we're sort of high on that offense to be pretty good, but there's a ton of games where beatable. Like, what is their toughest game? Is it at Indy leading into Green Bay? Dallas. Dallas on the third straight road game. Like, let's just pencil that in for
that's
L.
it. Yeah, that's the worst. Yeah, that's tough.
That's the worst one. So like, they have,
but the schedule is cake, man.
It is super cake. There's some stretches. There are some stretches there. We're like,
is it really cake, Andy?
Is it cake? Should we cut this open?
But
coming off a bye and getting either Trubisky or a rookie, getting Houston, and then getting Washington before you have a tough little stretch, 3 in a row, and then going back and it's New York and Chicago, and then ending up really haven't settled on what I think of New Orleans again. But if you need something to put you over the top, like, I like it when a team is able to kind of rest some guys in that last week, but also the uncertainty. We have no idea where this team will be. We have no idea where the rest of the teams will be. I love it if I'm backing a team, if they have a game at the end of the year at home against one of the worser teams on their schedule. But like, if you need that, if they need to put the hammer down to get the 1 seed, to get the division, whatever it is, like, that's always a beaut. It's nothing worse than seeing, we have a road game against a team that won their division last year. Like, that sucks. So ending the game at home versus the Giants, ending the season rather, I don't understand how this team underperforms outside of injuries.
You know what else is really, really, really freaking solid? I think Philly is the only team in the NFL that basically gets 2 buys. Do you see what I'm seeing in the middle there? They get a bye, frankly.
The Thursday to Monday?
Then they get a Thursday.
Yeah, there's 11 days in between those 2 games.
11 days between those 2 games.
Yeah,
the Thursday night game, you get to go up against Lovie Smith in Houston, making his Thursday night football.
You get a rookie head coach on Thursday, and then you get 11 days to prep for a dumpster fire.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
pretty
nice.
You get a couple buys within 4 weeks. Yeah. That is very nice.
Sounds pretty good. The other fun things I notice here. I mean, when the third toughest game by spread on your entire schedule is at Arizona, you got a cake schedule. you got a cake schedule. They're doing
their homework on you.
They are dogs outside of a field goal once. which I don't even think it says more about the quality of their opponents than it says about the
that number should
market
probably be
rating on this
bigger.
team. Probably, yeah.
Like that is a
The
really shitty travel
That's a
spot.
really
But
really
again,
bad one. Yeah.
looking at their travel spot, they have that Arizona spot. Is that it for going
West Coast.
anywhere west? Like
Yeah.
Dallas isn't close. I get it. Chicago's
That's
not
the longest trip they
Dallas
have
isn't
is at Arizona.
Dallas isn't Dallas is your second longest trip out. You go to Dallas and Houston. So you go to Texas twice, Arizona once, and then essentially it's like you take a puddle hopper to the Midwest
and you get extra rest all in the middle of that schedule. That's pretty damn nice.
It is a nice schedule. Yeah, we tried to throw cold water on here. I get it. If you again in the YouTube chat, on the Twitter, in the live chat, comments on the YouTube, if you have something that you've like, hey, you're a film guy or you have just watched every snap of Jalen Hurts, if you have some cold water you'd love to throw on him, I would love to hear it. I'd love to discuss that. Like, bring it to me. I'd love to see that because I just don't have a lot to dispel rumors that this team may win 14 games.
Two really fun ones on the schedule. Doug Peterson coming to the link.
Oh yeah, chat's all about
week 4. Doug Peterson coming to the link. That's fun. And then of course Monday Night Football. Wentz returns, if he's even still the starter.
I was gonna say, put odds on. Is it like Wentz is getting harassed because he's holding a clipboard for Howell?
Wentz being unavailable for injury or performance is probably about 33%.
If he has been benched at that point, like if you're him, you just make a case for like, my aunt's dog is sick. I gotta head back to North Dakota for the weekend. I'm just not going to be able to make it to Raljan. It's rough. I'm sorry.
Man.
It's a French bulldog. We love him to death. His name's Snooty. Like I gotta go up to Fargo because I would not want to go there. Like that just seems like a bad deal for him. Those fans are rough.
Yeah. I mean, one still has a back question mark, by the way, that we didn't even bring up last time, that I'm still very, eyes open. If Wentz is ever dealing with the back on the practice report, circle that in red Sharpie. So what? Well, I mean, we didn't even. So we basically didn't find any games where you got a pretty solid fade on this team, right?
Like if they become overrated, really. If they become overrated in the market, and that Dallas game is like Dallas -2, and they've just come off beating the shit out of Chicago or something.
But actually, can you go, Dan? Can you go back to the schedule?
Clear fall down spot.
Who's the best quarterback on this? Is there Rodgers. Any top 10 quarterback? Oh, Rodgers, yeah.
They played Rodgers. Matt Ryan has a chance to sneak into the top 10 just based on the players around him if he doesn't do some of the things he did last year. If it was truly his, the pieces around him that made him look that way, Matt Ryan's top 12. So, Kirk Cousins is kind of in the spot too. Murray has a chance if the pieces are in place there.
You dodge everyone who's good. You dodged them. Except for Rodgers.
Yeah, let's find a 17-0 prop.
Holy shit, man.
Kirk Cousins.
I'm getting it. I'm starting to buy in here. I guess, although at the same time, like, they're favored by more than a field goal bunch. Are you going to be laying points with this team often?
Again, maybe early, but once they become market darlings even more, like it's probably going to be expensive to back this team. I'll be backing them in other ways. If the offense is working and they play somebody who I think it's a good matchup, maybe team total overs. But once the team becomes expensive, you don't back a team just because they're good. You back a team because the market doesn't know how good they are. It's tough.
Okay. Well, thank you, Dan. I'm kind of blown away. I didn't really process how soft that schedule was until we saw it.
I looked at it earlier.
The whole NFC East, really, man. Like they just.
Well, I thought I pulled a
tough
U.
quarterbacks. Yeah.
I thought I pulled a U because I read and I looked at like, oh, they had a soft schedule last year, and I'm like, am I looking at it? Like, oh no, this is this year's schedule. They have a soft schedule again.
Yeah, they had a 4th place schedule, which made it softer than everyone else in the NFC East, but it was still a lot tougher than this year.
Yeah.
Ah, man.
So,
wow.
All right, the odds to win the Super Bowl.
Wow.
30-ish.
Pass.
Yeah, I again.
30. God damn it. If they're the 1 seed, though, fuck. 30-1 is going to be good in the pocket if they're the 1 seed. Shit.
I may shop around at a place that has like cash out options.
What's Hurts MVP price?
That's the thing too. They've been darlings already in the offseason. So Sirianni,
they already got all this has gotten bet
a lot of that has gotten bet down.
No.
So to win the NFC, like if I could find a let's see, I found a 15 at a place that has cash out options.
That's not a big enough number.
It's still not huge. Like at 18 would be great. Sounds like some people got some Hurts at 55 to 1 for Lipscomb. Femi got 50 to 1 for Super Bowl. Yeah, I was gonna say they got bet early and often. So
Hurts 55, yeah.
It's tough to be betting it now. To win the NFC East, I don't hate. It's basically a saying you believe in this team and it's going to matter that Dallas lost 3/4 of their receiving core, and we'll only be getting a little bit of that back eventually once we come off a major injury. So
plus
it's not big enough.
Doesn't move the needle. Yeah,
it's not big enough. But if I had to make a bet out of the 3, that would be the 1.
No. You already said it. Your win total over ladder makes the most sense to me.
Well, no, I'm going from the top down. Like eventually, the bet I will make is probably I'm not going to go as full bet like I did with the Bears. I do just love that one. But I will be looking at a ladder of win total. What do you want to call them? Alt win totals, like a little. So you go 3/4 of a unit on like over 9.5, and then a half on. You try to, let's say you had $200. You do like 75 on the regular one, 50 on the next one, 50 on the one after that, and maybe lighter on the next one. So I'll see how much money I want to split up on the Eagles, but it's going to be a smaller amounts on the bigger odds, I think, and we'll see where we can get. It's just like we used to do at 5 dimes with those alt overs. Like, those are fun.
Yeah, I can't do 25 to 1 on Hurts MVP. That's too low. Not quite enough equity to capture there.
I found a 35. Even that is.
That's borderline.
I only have one book open right now, so I will be shopping some Eagles stuff. I'll let you guys know what I end up betting. Is
there enough of a statistical improvement upside for Hurts to where even if they do get the 1 seed, is there going to be a plausible case? We'll get to this with another MVP bet I made in a couple of weeks, but is there a plausible case that his statistical upside, his statistics could improve to where he has MVP numbers from year 2 to year 3?
Yeah, I mean, if it just turned out he needed one more piece of the receiving core and a little more time with this offensive scheme, like a lot of times MVP awards aren't truly given off of counting stats. Sometimes it's, hey, his counting stats are top 10.
If his touchdown to interception ratio, if his touchdown to interception ratio is elite and they're the 1 seed, people are making plausible cases for him. MVP.
Yeah, he's in that, like if it were a Heisman, he's on the stage in that case. Like he doesn't need to be top 5 in every counting stat category if the team wins 13, 14
too
games.
Much. I think it's too much of a leap.
Because you have the Rodgers fatigue. Brady's won it probably too many times. That'll be more of a balanced team. It feels like they really want to give it to Josh Allen. And there's not much. They don't play the Bills. There's nothing.
Well, Josh Allen doesn't have to make an improvement, which is why that's part of a nice case.
Jalen Hurts can do everything he wants. And if Josh Allen throws 43 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, and they get the 1 seed, he's just going to get some extra hardware that year. So
yeah, I don't think Hurts is going to get it. I don't think he's in contention. He's on He's on the outs for me contention.
I definitely think he'll be in the conversation.
It's tough.
People will talk about it, and it won't be a case of like people talking out of their ass about it. It'll be merited if he can take this offense to the next.
Well, I'm already said I'm not going to bet it, so we're going to make a case against it every time it comes up.
I feel like it's like our Bengals from last year. Maybe we have to bet it now. Just have something when we run with our tails between our legs, we have some money at least.
Something.
So I mean, plan of betting attack. Like I said, I'm betting some alt overs in this team. I believe like if they're going to really overperform, I want to get a 4-1 because they won 13 games.
Okay. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do this out of spite. Okay. I missed the best of the prices. Out of spite, I'm going to root in my heart that the Lions beat them week 1. And the Lions train get the Restore to the Roar train gets off to a nice start, and then I can get better prices. I can be like boom value. Why bet the Eagles? Why bet the Eagles now? When you can just wait until after they lose to the Lions, Andy.
Just wait till they're down 7-0. Boom value.
Just wait there. Yeah, wait until they're down.
I mean, there's a chance this happen. Week 1 is always a weird week. We will be
wait until they're on 1.
I'll be in beautiful Las Vegas again.
This team is going to be wearing the weight of expectations, Andy. That's never a good way to start your season.
Heavy is the head that wears the cheesesteak crown, because the Phillies aren't getting any love. The Flyers aren't any good. This is the team.
Yeah.
I guess
okay, so plan a betting attack. Andy's going to ladder him. I'm going to be patient and wait for boom value. And I think ultimately we are expecting good things from this team in the regular season, but cautious about their potential for the offseason, especially because if you haven't even really been tested, if you haven't really played any, if you haven't gone up against any real, serious threats in the NFC, then that Super Bowl run could be tough, even if it goes through Philly. Although, boy, oh boy, is that a nice place to play your fucking home playoff games. That's a nice place to play your home playoff games.
Link. So, again, if you have anything you think we missed, leave it in the comments under the YouTube video. Leave it on our Twitter. And we're gonna take a step away. We're going to take a step away and come back in just a moment and do a Cowboys
I may be late to the party. Maybe late to the party with the Eagles, but I'm prepared to put on my dog mask.
You're the guy in the corner meme. They don't know I'm cheering against them in week 1.
I'm at the Eagles party, but I'm cheering against them.
You're at the Eagles party. They don't know I bet the Lions this week.
They don't know I bet the Lions this week. Yeah.
So,
all right, 4.5 points spread, by the way. You think 4.5 points is right?
The Lions still haven't proven, like as much bluster as we have, they still haven't proven anything. So that number is correct.
Okay. All right. Well, good pod. Let's talk about them Cowboys.
All right. Cleanse ourselves of all the Philly talk in a 3, 2,
1. Welcome to the deep dive. The Dallas Cowboys are in a very weird spot this year, Andy. This is a weird one because usually a team that is coming off of flirting with the playoffs, if they had stayed healthy, making the playoffs with 12 wins, like there's a clear progression here. They've locked up their quarterback for the long term. They've drafted well. They drafted the best defensive player in last year's draft by margin. This is a team that you would expect buzz, and yet training camp opens, and what is the story? McCarthy hot seat. Like, this is kind of crazy, where it feels like if they don't win a playoff game in the year 2023, which would be the 2022 season, then McCarthy's probably gone, which means that there is a big old range of outcomes here where this is not deemed a successful season. Is that your read?
Yeah, it was weird. Even talking about it last year, we've spoken to this point before. Everything I do when I prep is thinking about betting. Like, how can I, be in the best position to look at this team from a standpoint of being ready to bet on this team or make some preseason bets. And it's almost like it's like a one of those thought exercises where you always end up at the same spot and like, oh yeah, like how did I end up here again? Because I did it last year. I do it again. And it's like X, Y, Z, this happens, take these points away. This can't happen again. This might happen now. Oh my God, McCarthy's going to get fired. And then I run and I'm like, I should bet first coach fired. And then we get into the same thing. Jerry just doesn't fire coaches midseason. It was the same thing with Virginia McCaskey. Like, that's why it was so hard to stomach it.
Lay off. You had to lay off.
You knew it was going to happen. It just is not going to happen in season. So, like, I wanted to bet some McCarthy first coach fired, but it's just unless everybody makes it to the end of the year and the Cowboys get up earlier that day on Monday, like it's not going to happen. It just hasn't happened for so long with Jerry. So I don't understand the hot seat thing, and it's dumb too because the I don't know, the wisdom around it is Jerry and everyone else is such good friends with Sean Payton, and like there's a Payton and Waiting, and that's a thing. When actually like they have two pretty good coordinators, I would rather see one of them get a shot at it. I don't know if I ever need to see Dan Quinn coaching as a head coach again, but like I would rather see you promote from within than go back to Payton. And even that said, like I think Payton is an incredible coach, and I think he'd do a good job. But it is odd that that's kind of where people's heads are at. Like, oh man, we have a guy waiting for the spot, and he might get fired. It is a goofy thing. And yeah, Johnny's pointing out the playoff wins. Like nobody in this division has a playoff win since 2018. The Eagles and the Cowboys won in the first round. Before that, I believe it was the Eagles again with their run. But yeah, nobody in this division has had any success in the postseason for quite a while. See, obviously, the Eagles' playoff run was fine. And yeah, Femi says Kellen Moore probably a little overrated. I never can tell. Like I've been surprised before by some of these coordinators when they come up and get a job. You just never know what kind of leader of men you get. I think he's fine.
He's definitely overrated. He's way too fungible. Is that the right word for this?
I just don't know how much of that is the influence of McCarthy being his boss. And
it happened under Garrett.
I know, but that's you're making the same argument for me. How much of it is like I got to listen to Garrett? Like I can't do what I want here. So I don't know. I don't know what McCarthy is, or I don't know what Kellen Moore is if he ever gets a bigger job.
We'll see. Yeah, I at this point I feel like if you elevated Kellen Moore to the Dallas head coach, like you're kind of spitballing, he's Jason Garrett 2.0. Like I don't think you're hoping for much else. I don't think you're expecting much else at that point. But you're right. Because
again, some of it would depend on who he brought in on offense. Or if he decided to just call the plays himself. I don't know. I don't hate McCarthy. I don't hate this team. But talking of like what made this team successful, it is a really, really stinky whiff of the 2018 Bears. Like, oh, you guys had a super unsustainable rate of turnovers and big defensive plays. And, the offense looked good. And there's some things that maybe point to it having not as good of a year next year. I'm never going to put Dak and Trubisky in the same boat, but what they did on offense last year likely takes a step back, especially if they continue to commit to using Zeke as much as they're going to, and the wide receivers missing, and then just the defense. I mean, just talking 2021, it was amazing what they did on that defense. Like putting those players in the positions to succeed. That's not just getting lucky. Like they changed things about how Micah Parsons was used. And that wasn't all luck. The Trevon Diggs and interceptions thing, a lot of that is just right place, right time. Interceptions aren't sticky. If he didn't pick a single ball all year, it wouldn't surprise the hell out of me. I'm not saying he's bad. He's good at ball hawking. He gets burnt a lot. I mean, that's been pointed out plenty of times. But what they did on defense probably isn't super sustainable. And a big regression in big time plays like sacks and interceptions is a huge swing to win probability in a lot of games. And this team is probably poised to take a step back. I mean, if you want to talk about their offense last year, Drew, and what made what made that tick. And I mean, devil's advocate for taking a step back, like Dak was fighting some injuries at some points as well. If he's fully healthy, he's a very good quarterback.
It's really, 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 really tough to do a clear-eyed evaluation on Dak's 2021 campaign. The injury stuff is real, surely, and impacted him at times. But even, down the stretch where he was performing poorly, and notably his playoff, what a stinker. I mean, the loss to the Cardinals at the end of the season and the loss in the playoffs were both like neither of those were related to his health.
No.
And with the weapons that they had, with the health of the team overall at that point on offense, you should not be losing to the Cardinals 25-22. And you should definitely not be losing to the Niners by only scoring 17 points? What was the final there?
I don't think they got that many.
No, it was like 23-17 or
was
something.
it?
Right?
Okay. I feel like it was.
They had a chance at the end to win it with a
poor effort.
Touchdown. I don't really remember. Let me pull up the playoff game. We can kind of circle.
Did that game end on just running out of time because they ran up the middle and then tried to spike it and didn't get it?
Yes, that is what happened. that is what happened. Yeah.
Oh,
they didn't even have a chance at an end zone toss. It was 23-17. They lost by 6 with the clock expiring before they had a chance to throw it into the end zone. Okay, so the Dak in those moments, in the kind of the key clutch moments, he was not great, and that was concerning because he was healthy. The other kind of like general read on his performance coming into the season, I feel like you had a pretty clear range of outcomes. That was, he's coming back off of the ankle. He's probably going to be the comeback player of the year. He ultimately didn't even win that, by the way. And the range of outcomes was he could finish in the top 5 of quarterbacks. He won't be worse than 15th, right? That was kind of the consensus, somewhat tight bands on what his expectation was, right? And I don't think he ended up on the low end of that. And I don't think anyone coming into this season is weighting Dak with the ceiling of top 5 anymore. I think there's been a big correction of his ceiling into like the 10 range, maybe. And there's
I don't know. If he's healthy, I still have him high, but it's just, it becomes more difficult to get into. And maybe it's the same thing. Maybe we're saying the same thing. It's much more difficult to get into that range if you are still, on a team that's bound and determined to feed Zeke just as much as they feed Pollard, a team that lost some pretty important pieces and not only that, but like, as it turned out, they did not get value for Cooper. Once you finally saw all the other wide receiver trades go down, it was kind of like the Diggs thing with Minnesota. Like everyone was super sad up here to lose Diggs, but everyone was like, well, shit, at least we didn't have the trade of, remember the Houston to Arizona trade for Hop? Yeah. It was like, at least it wasn't that. So the Cooper trade was rough. They lost Cedric Wilson. We talked about him in Miami. Like, he was an important piece. I don't think James Washington is fully capable of stepping into either of those spots. So you need Lamb to be a full-ass number 1. And then Gallup, it's mid-season, they're saying. coming off that knee injury. So
Yeah,
the
Gallup
receiving,
for whatever.
having the
Yeah,
receiving core looking like that, I mean, you're right. Like, I think he has the skill level to be a top 5, but having a big bump in the road, they're almost too successful at finding good wide receivers. They couldn't keep them all. And really, I read something about the guy. I don't know his name because it's not something I jotted down. But over
Yeah.
the past couple of years, being able to draft Parsons, Lamb, and Diggs, and those are in like the last three drafts, and none of those were, oh shit, Dallas was like 2-14 and they have a high pick. Those are all
Mhm.
middle of the round guys that they
Mhm.
identified, found, and developed into studs. So if nothing else, I guess we can be hopeful for their draft class because they've seemingly been good at evaluating
Oh,
talent.
they're
Maybe
they've
as far back as Dak.
lately they've been drafting well and developing well, but managing the roster poorly.
That's
In my opinion.
well said.
And
Put that on a banner.
And here's the other problem about Dak. He really and truly, it wasn't McCarthy that lost in that playoff game. It was Dak's performance. And I think that is what has a lot of people on pause because, of course, it's the most recent time anyone's seen him. He had 14 bad throws in that game. And ultimately, he wasn't under pressure to the same degree that some of the other teams that play at San Francisco had quarterbacks under pressure. He just could not run the offense effectively despite being at home and despite this not being his first playoff game. And so you would think that in general, third time around in the playoffs, guy's already got the contract. Guy's got a fully healthy offense and a system that is working. They should have won that playoff game. And he at least should have performed better. Even if not winning, they should have at least had a better performance out of him. It took until about the midway through the third quarter before I thought Dak Prescott operated a drive efficiently. And like he was the game didn't slow down for him until it was already almost too late. And at that point, the Niners did just enough to to play keep away to seal that one. And I think if the Cowboys win that game, McCarthy's not on the hot seat. I think if the Cowboys win that game, Dak's being talked about as an MVP candidate this season. And I think in general, there's been sort of a souring on their ceiling under him, which may or may not be fair. This may be an opportunity to buy low on the Cowboys for all I can tell you. But the changes to the wide receiver core are very, very interesting and I think create big questions about this team for 2022. And you mentioned Cooper gone. He wasn't ever, he didn't ever really, I guess, live up to the expectations, but it doesn't hurt to have a guy of that talent level in your wide receiver room. For whatever
and
it was
I
worth.
shouldn't disparage James Washington. Like, I think there's a case for James Washington is another guy that maybe just got lost in the wash where it's like, hey, this guy might be really good, but there's all these other receivers up here in Pittsburgh and we just don't know. Like, he's behind like 3 other guys. And we did see flashes, when we'd see some injuries or he just got to take the field a little more. We saw flashes of good James Washington. So, I mean, he just never had a real big season because he just didn't get a ton of opportunities. It was 2019. He had 80 targets. That's his max. So maybe somebody stepping into a bigger role, he can be fine.
Here's the weird thing about
sold on
Dak.
that. I'm just trying to find a silver lining for these receivers.
This is the weird thing about Dak and the wide receiving core that I need some perspective on from you. It never felt like Dak was ever really on the same page with Cooper. Like the fit wasn't quite there in terms of what Cooper wanted to run and where he was best utilized and what Dak was willing or interested in throwing or good at throwing. Gallup was the opposite. I felt like Gallup and Dak was like a match made in heaven. I don't know if it's just in general because of their skill sets were complementary or what, but his chemistry with Gallup was incredible. And so when Gallup comes back, I think you could potentially see Dak's numbers and this offense get a shot in the arm. Here's the weird one, though. Is CeeDee Lamb good? He had a role and he had the opportunity in hindsight in that offense with that many weapons and that many people to cover. He should have had like a Jamar Chase type of breakout, and he didn't.
And maybe with some of that we do have to attribute to the other people around him, Dak, Kellen, Mike, but he's good. Like he over 2 years in the league,
drops a lot.
That is an issue, but a couple hundred targets, 153 catches, 2,000 yards, 11 touchdowns in his first 2 years.
He's a target magnet, but the production
crowded wide receiver room. Yeah, like and that maybe with the rejiggered wide receiver core, maybe he does a little more with those targets. They use him in some different kind of routes, but yeah, he's good. He's very good. We'll just find out what kind of role he's going to take now that he is Duke in New York, number 1.
Did he get hurt in the San Francisco game?
I don't remember that.
He was targeted 5 times with 1 catch for 20 yards.
The game plan, I'd like to go back and look at that play-by-play. It feels like just the game plan in that whole game was just a fever dream of what is Dallas doing here. It was poorly thought out, poorly executed, and yielded poor results, obviously. Because it felt like the fact that at the end that they had a chance, like if he's able to clock the ball one more time and they get a shot at the end zone, they could have won that game, and it felt undeserved.
Yeah, you can blend. You wanted something crazy? You can blend success rate and EPA per play in a way that kind of gives you like basically an efficiency type of metric, right?
Mm-hmm.
The most efficient guy in the receiving core last year wasn't Gallup.
Jarwin.
It was Dalton Schultz.
It
was Dalton Schultz. With Andy, here's a fun one. You ready? In the blind, how many catches did Dalton Schultz have last year?
Like 30? Is that high?
78.
Nah.
Dalton Schultz had 78 receptions last year. He was targeted 104 times. Do you know that there was only 30 players in the NFL with 100 targets last year, and Dalton Schultz was one of them?
How did Big? I thought Jarwin got a lot. I'm mixing up my tight ends. Oh, we had Jeremy Sprinkle on the team for a little bit.
He's still on the team.
Sean McKeon. Yeah, Blake Jarwin. Wow, 78.
Blake Jarwin was a massive part of the Cowboys offense last year. Massive. And
I didn't bet the Cowboys saw that much.
Honestly, the games I watched of the Cowboys and when the offense felt like it was working its most effectively, it was Dak on the boot and Dalton Schultz like just completely coming uncovered because people thought he was in a run block.
He had as many targets as Amari Cooper.
Yes. How fucking crazy is that in this offense? Yes.
He had as many touchdowns as Amari Cooper.
He did. Amari Cooper.
I feel like we played him like first touchdown scorer in primetime games, but I don't remember him having this many yards.
Schultz's stat lines. Look, and by the way, like he was more efficient than Amari Cooper. Like if you are looking in hindsight, they were right to target him the way they targeted him.
Yeah, 75% catch percentage, 7.8 yards per target.
Yeah.
10.4 yards per touch.
Yes. What the hell? It's wild, man.
And you know how many fumbles he had?
0.
He
did not fumble. Yeah.
Maybe Lamb's not your one. Maybe this is
Dalton Schultz is your one.
This is your Texas Kelsey.
There are some elements and some whips of that if they are using him the same way they did last year, which I thought was really effective. Now, teams will have adjustments in pocket for it this year because they weren't using him in like a dozen different ways. Like Kelsey is never going to be adjustable in an offseason because they deploy him like 50 different ways. He's a Swiss Army knife at times, right?
Yeah.
Schultz's most effective play, I can see it in my head. Like I can visualize he's lined up on the right and they're in a running formation and they fake the handoff and Dak is bootlegging and then Schultz is open and he trots for 20. Like it was a very effective way to move the sticks for this team in between the 20s. And I mean, it's going to be fascinating to see if they can build on that or if that was fluky. And honestly, the CeeDee Lamb question mark for 2022 is a big part of how you project this offense, which is weird that we would even say that, but your wide receiver one being better than, taking a meaningful step forward helps you get your offense to its ceiling and anything else. And this is now everything is kind of in trouble.
Having a safety blanket is so important too, to make a good quarterback great. Like if Schultz wants to be that again, and it's funny, I'm looking at his stuff. He had a lot of snaps his first couple of years. Apparently they just said this guy's a blocker. And then 1 year they're like, maybe, hey, that blocking tight end, what if we threw to him 100 times this year? I don't know if something clicked in camp with Dak. So, all right. So kind of a lot to see on this offense. We got to see how they use the backs in the receiving game. If it's
crazy is it? How crazy is
it
in an offense where your top paid player in running back room is Zeke Elliott, and he is significantly less efficient than your other guy? Your top wide receivers were significantly less efficient than Gallup and Schultz, right?
You should just be run Schultz out there wide and put Pollard in the backfield, 3 downs. Yeah. That's your offense.
Honestly, a Pollard, Gallup, Cedric Wilson around Dak last year, for a full 17-game season, I think your offense performs better just based on the efficiencies, which is crazy. But Zeke is holding them back clearly. Yeah. That's not a mystery at this point. People are speculating on what the split's going to be between Pollard and Zeke. And I mean, if you know the answer to that, then by all means tell me.
Similar to last year, which is maybe better than most expect. But if it were 50-50, I could live with that, because I feel like they want it to be worse than that. It should be the other swung the other way, but we'll find out on that. And maybe if he just continues to be less and less effective every year like he has been, they'll be forced to swing it to like a 70-30 Pollard. But I don't know. It's you get to see this coaching staff has seemed to be stubborn about that. We'll find out.
I mean, I think everybody has to answer to the owner, and the owner says, "Use the guy I paid," and the rest is history.
Cereal eating motherfucker, get him the ball.
I like it when he does the cereal thing.
Yeah, I like it when it
get him in the end zone.
I do that with my Raisin Bran in the morning.
Yeah. Okay. So the defense is the other kind of huge Achilles heel for this team as far as a market pricing standpoint, because the data last year would tell you that they were clearly top 10. But as Andy laid out in the preview, or in the top, off the top there, it was all fragile, not sticky, not predictive, year over year, big swings, regression type of elements that made the defense good. They had incredible luck on third downs. They had incredible turnover luck. They had incredible turnover luck that turned into amazing field position / scores. And even a breath of regression on all that, and this defense is all of a sudden looking at a much tougher road in terms of performing at that level.
I didn't even bring up third down defense. I went straight to turnovers because that's even bigger. But yeah, they were damn close to Buffalo. Like I think I had it up. Yeah, they were second in the league in third down defense without having probably complete defense. So much of it was they were able to get an incredible amount of pressure from 3 or 4 different guys. I don't think Randy Gregory is the biggest loss in the world, but he was part of that. It's not beneficial to lose him. So if people are able to pick up on what made Micah Parsons so successful and what made this pass rush so successful, again, it's always just a chess game. If other teams are able to counteract the things that actually made them good, and then some of the luck runs out on big plays, sacks, turnovers, interceptions, and third down, Yeah, middle of the road off. It's a middle of the road defense. Like that's for sure. That's where I have them.
Yep.
They have a wide range for me because I'm a little out on just saying it's going to regress and it's going to be bad. Like it can still be a good defense. It's just not going to be a great defense that has all these high impact plays all the time. I still think it can be a good defense.
This happens every year.
I know. And that's I'm like, I think, they're the most likely outcome is like, hey, they're right in the middle.
Yeah,
It's like
they're
the 15th best.
Hey, what do you know? Dallas's defense, 13th best in the NFL. Yeah, that sounds about right. They got Micah Parsons. He's fucking awesome. Like they should be around 13. With him alone. And I think that's maybe the where if you're looking for silver lining, that's where you point. Here's what I will tell you about Micah Parsons. I was wrong entirely in the preseason last year about how good he was going to be as a rookie. I thought he deserved actually consideration for Defensive Player of the Year. I think Legacy tipped that in the Legacy and counting stats. Yeah, Legacy and counting stats tilted that in favor of TJ Watt, but he was right in there in the discussion. I think expecting him to be a top 5 defensive player this season, completely reasonable. Nobody is pricing in that way, though. Nobody is really counting on it. And I can see why, because I am not either. And the reason is I hate everything I read about what Dan Quinn wants to do with them. I hate it. And Dan Quinn said and tried the same stuff last year in camp, and it made me cold on Parsons coming to the year, and he's doing it again. Like they're bound to determine to make him more than what he is, which is an absolutely elite, instinctual pass rushing monster. And they need to just give up and make that his role. And it seems to me like they are trying to do more. And freaking Dan Quinn got all kinds of weird pats on the back for the various ways in which they lined him up and disguised him and all the different unique things they were doing with him. And whoa, he's so versatile. And people are all blinded by the versatility. Fuck all that. Like this guy's Von Miller 2.0. You have young Von Miller in your team. Like just get him in position to fucking wreak havoc. And it's, I am not confident that Dan Quinn's going to not fuck this up.
I tend to agree, and it is so hard. We talked about this with, I got deep into this, and I still think about Eberflus. Like, did he make Darius Leonard? Did Darius Leonard make him? We're going to find out if this guy's actually smart now that he's in charge of a team. And I think I can definitively say that Dan Quinn did a better job than I thought he would. But
the bar
Micah Parsons is and maybe will be within the next. I think Micah Parsons win a defensive player of the year within the next couple of years. I know I say Dan's giving me shit for going back to the Eberflus. Well, I'm just happy I know how to say his name. And eventually McDaniel and McDaniels, we're going to be able to nail that too. But there is always that question of like, hey, I won't say Eberflus this time, Dan. Is LaFleur any good? Or is the fact that he has Aaron Rodgers as his quarterback making him seem like, oh, this guy's won the division 3 times in a row? Well, guess what? We could put my friend from down at Walmart in charge of the team, and Aaron Rodgers probably win the division 2 out of 3 years. So like, but the Dan Quinn thing for sure, I think you can say is like, no, this guy's a freak because you put him in a pass rush position. It's not like Dan Quinn knew just where to put him. No, it doesn't matter where you put him. If you put him and say, go get the quarterback from the edge, he gets to the quarterback. He had 14 goddamn sacks. If you tell him to, create the edge on a run play, he seals it up and he drives the running back into the arms of the interior lineman. If you tell him you need to cover this tight end, he's fast. He changes the directions quick, and he's got the instincts to cover people. If you tell him to do, you tell him go back there and long snap, he'd probably be fine at that too. Like the guy is just good at everything. So it's not like Dan Quinn put him in positions to succeed. Dan Quinn put him in positions, and he succeeded because he's so fucking good at everything. Like that was the biggest surprise to me, like his coverage, because it's like, oh, this guy's a really good pass rusher. But then you look and like on running plays, he's just killing his assignments. On coverage plays,
I don't like him in coverage. Don't drop
he's
him in
doing
coverage anymore. Make it stop.
he's doing an admirable job when they ask him to, though.
Yeah, but
And
you know what
again,
he's
like,
doing in
but
coverage? You know
you
what he's
know, no,
doing?
Drew, and you're right though. Like, they should just just be a pass rusher all the time,
Yeah.
or a great. He's a good run stopper too, as far as his assignment on the edge and making
Oh,
sure
yeah,
the
great
running
run
back
stopper, sure.
goes to where he needs to go. Like, the guy's just a freak, and yeah, I'm fine with using him less in coverage, even though
Yeah.
he's good. He's good enough.
He's good enough, but you know what he's doing when he's in coverage? He's not rushing
He's
the
not
passer.
rushing the passer. Yeah.
Yes, that's right. That's right. That's right. So yeah, I think I mean, if Dan Quinn, he got it quick, he got it early and changed Micah's role last year, I thought, in the Tampa Bay game, and then, you know, for us was history. It was match made in heaven. I'm hopeful that there's not some overthinking it. Don't overthink it. Like, just turn this guy loose and let him be his best self, because he's instinctual. He's awesome. And you know, I think with that, let's look at the schedule and find some quarterbacks whose Sundays he's going to ruin. Starting with Tom Brady. Tom Brady and his new Tom Brady's work in progress offensive line gets tested right out of the gate, which will be interesting. Sunday Night Football. I haven't bet anything in that game yet, but boy, is that going to be a fun handicap. We are looking at a wildly different, considering Dallas and Philly both lost playoff games in round one last year. The fact that Philly dodges Tampa, LA, and doesn't have to go at Green Bay, my goodness gracious. Like, right away, those three pop as much, much tougher tests than what Philly has to deal with. Plus, Philly gets Pittsburgh in the cross conference, and Dallas gets Cincy. Not great. Generally, the sequencing is pretty favorable here for the Cowboys, but of all of the schedules we looked at in the week schedule, NFC East, this is the toughest. Would you agree?
Yeah, I was gonna say, despite it being similar-ish, it is still your first place schedule. It involves playing Tampa, it involves playing Green Bay. You get Cincinnati as well. So, and it should be. They won the division. They had 12 wins. It should be the toughest. You still get the ease of getting to play the AFC South. You still get to play, the Lions and Bears. So there are easy-ish elements, but it is tough. Like, at the Super Bowl champions, at Green Bay, Green Bay's ceiling last year was probably Super Bowl champions. If a few things shake out differently, that team can beat Cincinnati. Like, these are very good teams, and Devontae Adams not there anymore, but it's still Green Bay. Tampa and Cincy to start the season, that sucks as far as a 1-2 punch. Getting the Rams, at least it's after that Washington game. The sequencing isn't terrible, but again, it's a West Coast flight to get out there to go play at SoFi. That's not great. Your bye is essentially neutered by having to play a road game right after the bye against a tough ass team. And then again, Minnesota is a team that we think the market is maybe a little low on, especially on the offensive side. It's not a great spot coming off the bye either. And then you're, again, maybe not the best teams in the world, but closing the season with 2 road games. If this team gets into the playoffs and it's not as your division champion, that playoff game will be a 3rd straight week on the road for this Dallas Cowboys team. So if you are making the playoffs as a wild card, get ready to be disappointed again, Dallas fans. Like, what are we doing? Like, oh shit, we're heading to Tampa, we're heading to Green Bay, we're heading to Philly. I don't know. It depends how everything hashes out, but a 3rd straight road game, it hasn't worked out for a lot of teams.
They got some tough spots on the schedule. That back-to-back 5-6 is nasty. At the Ram, you got to fly across, go out to LA, then you go turn right around and you face Philly. That pick 'em on Sunday Night Football against Philly feels wrong. Like that feels like that should be 2.5-ish, right? And I think, yeah, you have to, in the first 5 weeks of the season, you have to play both of last year's Super Bowl teams. Like, nice. Oh yeah, and the team that won the Super Bowl the year before in Tampa. Like you there is the delta between the quarterbacks that Philly has to face, and oh, by the way, you get Tom Brady, Matt Stafford, and Joe Burrow.
Silver lining: they don't play Kansas City or Buffalo. That's it. Like,
or Justin Herbert. Yeah, you avoid Josh Allen, you avoid Lamar Jackson.
There's a few. Yeah, you don't play every top quarterback, but yeah, you Brady, Burrow, Rodgers. And I mean, and the Rams. I don't want to just say like Stafford. I don't know if Stafford is actually a top 5 quarterback, but that team is clearly a top 5 team. And then, like we said, Minnesota's offense isn't going to be something you can take lightly. Indianapolis's offense is likely not a team you can take lightly. If we think Philly is this team taking a big step forward, you got 2 games against them, and one of them is in kind of a shitty spot, coming a second straight road game after the Rams game. I really haven't determined what I'm making of Tennessee yet, but and then interdispersed is a bunch of wins. Like, you should beat the Giants, you should beat the Washington Commandos a couple times. Detroit isn't probably a little bit of an advantageous spot outside of you're not getting a rest advantage there, so it's a bit of a landmine coming after those
coming
two
off
road
of
games.
Coming off of a road
division rivalry on the
Yeah.
road, Sunday Night Football, and Detroit will have a rest advantage. That's not a great spot, but again, you should beat Chicago, you should beat the Giants again, you should beat Houston, Jacksonville, Washington, probably Tennessee. Like, yeah, there's kind of a soft landing at the end because you get Philly at home and all those other bad teams, and maybe India isn't as good as we think, and that's a win. But like, yeah, that stretch from like the Giants game in week 12 on, there's a non-zero chance that let's say Gallup is back, he's healthy, the knee seems fine, integrated in the offense perfectly, things are starting to click, the regression isn't as bad as we think. There's a spot where this team can run at the end of the season and go, how many games we have there? 7. Go 5-2, 6-1 in that stretch and make a run at this division, make a run at a higher seed, but depends how it goes. Division. Yeah, it depends how it goes. Well, I don't know. Like,
too much ground to make up. I look at this.
We'll see how things go. Okay. Like, if they lose those coin flip games to Philly and Cincy and Minnesota, then yeah, maybe you're not playing for the division anymore.
You know what? I look at this. This looks like 9-8, 8-9. Really, the imbalance is notable. You're going to be digging yourself out of a hole relative to Philly, especially. And I guess the question is, yeah, shit, man. You're looking at 4-4 at the bye, maybe 3-5 if Detroit shows up in that very nice spot for them, the gift wrapped spot to try to make Detroit happen. If you do not come out of the bye and do well at Green Bay, how hot is the hot seat for Mike McCarthy? If it's 3-7 and you are looking at Minnesota and then your Thanksgiving Day game.
Again, it's probably scorching, and the media is all over it. But I still don't think he gets fired till the end of the year.
Oh, I'm not saying he gets fired. No. I'm just saying, like, how does that change, like, what's going on with the team? Like, can you talk yourself?
Oh, you're saying, do you think this team coaches differently because of where they're at?
Yes. Do they coach themselves out, or do they coach themselves into the 7th wild card spot and try to save McCarthy's job?
And just get wrecked by Tampa.
Just get wrecked by whoever. Yeah. Because outside of Dak Prescott making the leap back into the clear top 10 discussion, outside of Micah Parsons being your clear defensive player of the year, I don't see much better than 500 on this schedule. But 500 might be good enough to get you into the playoffs with the very weak NFC. So if you're taking care of, especially if you're taking care of business down the stretch, then I think you're looking at potentially the 7 seed. Who's going to be the 2 seed? Could be Green Bay. You might have to go back to Green Bay. Mike McCarthy in Green Bay wild card weekend in the 2-7. How about that? How would that be?
Yeah. Do you guys remember? I don't know if we talked about it on here, but it was
coaching for his job.
Anybody who's in the Deep Dive Discord, there was a good conversation one morning, and it led me to put a few bucks on Indianapolis exact method of like how their season
elimination
ends.
Stage of elimination.
Could not think of the words. Dallas Cowboys stage of elimination wildcard weekend. Don't hate that.
Don't hate it at all.
I don't know what that price would be. I'm guessing
what's the bad
2-1.
Who are in your mind? Who are realistically the contenders for the 1 and 2 in the NFC? I don't want to spoil all of our other NFC previews. We've only done now 2 divisions in the NFC.
Tampa Bay.
Yes.
Green Bay.
Yes.
Honestly, Minnesota.
Okay.
Philly.
Okay.
The Rams.
Okay.
And then, and maybe I should have put Minnesota in this, but because it is really Tampa, Green Bay, Philly, Rams, and then maybe there's a secondary tier where Minnesota, if things go right, the Niners, if Trey Lance turns out like. Yeah. Honestly, the Cardinals have enough pieces. If they figure out a few things, there's a shot. I'd put them maybe in the tier below that. And then the Saints are in that tier too, as far as they have enough talent on that team. If things aren't, hey, this guy's not suspended and this quarterback works out, like there's some things. But honestly, it's probably the 2 Bays, Philly, and the Rams
and the Phillies. Yeah,
it's probably just
any of those. I guess if you draw Philly in the 2-7, you're not feeling terrible.
No, yeah, there's some familiarity. And you know what? It's hard to beat a team 3 times in a row. Well, and I mean, they've had their number.
You are talking about laying the points on the second head-to-head there. Okay, so are you afraid of going to LA if you're the Cowboys?
You've already done it once.
It's not bad. That's not bad.
Yeah, it's a repeat.
Yeah, so Philly and LA aren't bad.
All of those games would be rematches. Every single one of those would be a rematch if those 4 teams are in the 2 seed.
Shit, you're right, man.
You play all those in Minnesota too. The top, I think the top 5 teams that you're most likely to face as a 2 seed, if you're the 7, are all teams you've already played already.
Okay, so you're in trouble if it's Tampa. You're in trouble if it's Green Bay. Surely. You're feeling okay if it's anyone else. But yeah, stage of elimination wild card for the Cowboys feels really freaking good, actually. And I mean, if the football gods are out there, and if the Lions don't make it this year, then at least give us Green Bay versus Mike McCarthy going back to Green Bay with his coaching, his last chance to save his coaching career on the frozen tundra in January would be something. The drama would be a lot. Do you put that game on Monday night, or do you put that game on Sunday in like the sweet spot window? When do you put that game on?
I do Sunday night.
That's your top rated playoff game of wildcard weekend by a mile.
Another one you could make too, just Cowboys finish second in the division is 2-1. I cannot find these stage of elimination ones now. There's just so many bets. Like books are horrible at organizing things. Like you have 9 different kinds of. We have NFL season player props, NFL season props, NFL futures, NFL requested futures. Like there's just too much stuff going on here. I found it. Stage of elimination: Dallas to lose in wild card round +225 at our friends at Bodog in Canada, Bovada in the US. Not super juicy.
That's not getting me up. That's not getting me out of bed.
It's fun to talk about.
It is. Too much has to happen, though. I think there's too much of a likelihood that if things don't go well, this team doesn't rally around McCarthy, and then things get ugly down the stretch for sure.
Rally around the family.
Sure. Interesting. Odds. So what's our plan? What's our odds? Let's look at
Our
them.
odds are embarrassingly low for a team we just kind of shat on.
LOL.
LOL.
LOL. LOL. LOL. LOL.
And
LOL.
maybe even an ML LMAO.
For the podcast listeners, I'll read them aloud. Super Bowl 18-1. To win the NFC is plus 850. NFC East plus 125. This team is your favorite with that schedule? Okay. To make the playoffs, yes is minus 260. Oh my goodness. Yes is minus 260. Ooh, you can get a little squirrely in Dutch no plus 200 and wild card elimination plus 200 if you were feeling.
I tried to do that with the Colts. They didn't. I tried to parlay the Colts to win the division and the Colts to be eliminated in the first round. They wouldn't let me.
That you know what you need?
You know what they do that the requested specials. They'll let you do that.
You know what you need for that? You need like an over under on progression and basically say under wild card round. You know, basically like either they make the wild card and lose or they don't make the playoffs at all and it's a winner. That's basically like a 50-50 market at this point.
No to make the playoffs is tempting.
It is tempting. Regular season win total 10.5 plus 105. Under 10.5 is minus 130. That's the only bettable number.
Just
on
again,
this.
let's assume that Philly, Green Bay, Tampa, and LA are in the playoffs. Leaves you 3 spots.
Yeah.
Minnesota, New Orleans,
Niners,
Dallas,
Saints, and Cowboys are your presumptive next tier. Yeah.
Hey, yeah, there's an odd team out there, and this presumes that the Cardinals and the Giants and maybe even somebody like that's it.
Panthers.
I'm gonna draw the line. Yeah, I'm not gonna say the Panthers. Somebody like the
Lions.
Yeah, the Lions make some
run
at this. I mean, there's an odd team out for sure. Yeah, I'm not betting it at 2-1, but under 10.5.
I would take some under 9.5. I think 9 is my fare for these guys.
I'm gonna look to see if someone has a flat 10.
What's the 9.5 price going to be? You think plus 160, 175? Not enough.
No, you'd get something similar.
That's what I would bet if I bet anything, though.
Yep. Plan of attack is, and somebody did mention. I think Febby mentioned this. You look at the schedule. I did mention those last 7 games. If you have some sort of belief, there is a case to be made to take them to make the playoffs, to win the division, to win the NFC. If they are truly floundering through that tough part of the schedule, the numbers for those things are going to be much, much better than what you just saw on that card. Like you're going to
when you can decide?
Bigger numbers.
I think you decide on November 20th. That is before November after they play Green Bay, before they play Minnesota. That's your decision point. Because the Minnesota game is going to be, they're going to be small dogs in that at that time probably. And you'll know more about Dallas. You'll know more about Minnesota. You'll be able to make an informed decision about what is likely to happen there. And then after that, you get the Giants, Indy, Houston, Jacksonville run, which would be the only time possible that they could play their way in. So, oh man, excited.
If you,
too far
if you have a bet, again, YouTube comments, leave some comments. Apparently that's good for the algorithm. So did I tell you that story, Drew, real quick before we go?
No,
it's 9:15.
By all means.
I said the same thing on Brown Bag Bets, and I'm old and my memory is going. And I said, hey, leave a thumbs up in the YouTube. And you guys right now hit the thumbs in the YouTube. I said, you know what else helps the algorithm? Leaving a comment. YouTube loves it when videos get comments. Like that is a big help. And I said, leave me a comment, even if you just say, hey, Andy, I like your hat. I said that, forgot all about it. And then I was going through the comments on like the back end. And there was a comment that just said, hey, Andy, I think your hat is just meh. And I got mad because I had forgotten all about it. I'm just pissed at this guy. I said, who the fuck does this guy think he is? Like I told this story on Brown Bag, but I was for like a split second, like, why would he say that? What is wrong with this person?
You took it super personally. Yeah.
Well, I just didn't understand. Like, why would he take the time to say that?
Holy
it wasn't.
Shit.
But so yeah, leave a comment. Doesn't have to be about my hat. Tell me what you make, what you've bet. Even if you just want to brag about a really good number you got on Jalen Hurts MVP, leave that in the YouTube comments, and we'll catch you back here. There'll be a video on Friday. It'll be pre-recorded, but I think you'll like our Smart Guy Fridays.
Yeah, and if you bet the Eagles and they lose to the Lions week 1, don't tune into the week 2 because there's gonna be a lot of I told you so's.
I have no choice. I have to be here. It's like AFC